All right, gang, let's get started. Good morning. Good morning. Hope you had a great weekend. Welcome to Monday morning's edition of Morning Ascent. So as I said in my opening remarks, our biggest challenge, I think, are two things. Number one, just maintaining the right mindset, the right attitude every single day, starting from the moment we get up. But I think that an equal challenge that we have is just simply interacting with and communicating with other human beings. And, the more we try to do on a daily basis, especially in this business, as we get busy working with clients and agents and just the challenges of the business, the more we interact with people, the more mistakes we're going to make, not only with our clients and the other professionals in the business, but just people in our lives, those people who are at our homes, our spouses, our significant others, our children, our friends, family members. And I wanted to just chat with you this morning about my thoughts on effective apologies, because as we make mistakes going throughout our day on a day-to-day basis, our days, we're going to make mistakes. We're going to do things that are going to offend other people, that are going to piss other people off, that are going to make people feel bad. They're going to make people feel unsafe in their relationships with us. And the number one key to an effective relationship, guys and gals, is this. It is meeting people's expectations. I want you to think about that. I want you to think about any of the relationships that you've had in the past or relationships that you're in currently, and think about those that are going well. And then I want you to think about those that aren't going well and really understand what the defining difference is. I can just, without knowing the specifics of the relationship, I can tell you, I know exactly why the relationship is going well versus a relationship that isn't going well, what the difference is. It comes down to this. It comes down to expectations. See, if a person is meeting your expectations in the relationship, then you're happy. It's when your expectations are not discovered and not met that you begin to become dissatisfied, disenchanted, angry, whatever emotion that we can experience, frustrated in a relationship when our expectations are not met. And so I want to talk more about this idea of apologizing to people, because we're oftentimes not going to meet their expectations. And it doesn't mean that we intentionally fail to meet their expectations. It's just that people make mistakes. You and I make mistakes. We'll say and do things that, after we've had time to think about it, with forethought or with afterthought rather, we look at it and say, okay, that was stupid. I shouldn't have done that. Shouldn't have said that. So let's agree that we all make mistakes. What we don't want to do is continue to make the mistake of not engaging in a conversation, first of all, honest one with ourselves about, okay, what did we do wrong? What do we do to not meet the expectations of this person that I'm in this relationship with? And what could I do differently? And I think to really address the issue this morning that I want to talk about is, how do I apologize to that person? What do I do to make things right so that this person doesn't continue to be angry with me, upset with me, sad when they think about me, so that we have a great relationship like we had before, or even a better relationship? So I just want to share with you some thoughts on how to effectively apologize. Before I do that, though, I want to share with you a story about really the importance of this, because I want you to think about the relationships that you are in currently, whether they are just business relationships or they're more familiar, friends, family members, even a spouse or a former spouse. I find it so interesting, especially the issue on former spouses. I talk to people all the time who have been divorced from their spouse, what they call their ex, for years, and they still have this tumultuous relationship where there's a lot of tension, or there's anger and there's frustration, and you can hear it in their voice, you can hear it in their language, the words that they use. And I find it so fascinating. So I want to talk a little bit about that as well. So I just want you to think about the relationships that you're in currently. Is there anything that you should be apologizing for? And what should you be apologizing for? I mean, what is it that is within that relationship that maybe you have done that has created some anxiety, that if you were to address that anxiety or that frustration or that tension within the relationship would go away? And as you think about that relationship, how has that It's oftentimes it's described as a grudge, but that tension, that anxiety, how is that affecting the relationship, especially if it's something that's been done recently? If it's a relationship that's, a long-term relationship, and there's been an infraction or something that you've done, but it's been weeks, months, or years ago, it may not be so obvious, but still that tension is there, especially if you're engaging in the same behavior over and over again, which oftentimes we do. I mean, that's the whole point about this thing that I want to talk about this morning, is how to effectively apologize. And one of it is making certain that we're not doing it over and over again, because it's like the boy who cries wolf, right? You say one thing so many times it's not accurate, people will stop believing you, right? So it's about committing to making certain that when we do apologize, that we commit to not doing it again. And if we do it again and again and again, our word becomes meaningless. But I just want to go back again to just these questions about, think about the relationships you're in right now. Is there something that you need to apologize for? And who is that person that you need to apologize to? And how is it affecting your relationship? How would it feel for them? Just imagine if you were to address this thing, and how would it feel for you to get that weight off of your chest and to get that cleared up within the relationship? How much better the relationship would be? How would it feel for you to get that person back in your life? Because for some of you, as you're thinking about this, there are likely some friends or family members that you're estranged from because of this thing, because of something that they did or you did or that you both did, that has created this alienation or this estrangement. So how would your life be different if that were not the case? If that anger and that frustration, that hatred or that lack of security, whatever it is, did not exist within that relationship, how would it be different? Let me just share with you this story. And then what I'll do is I'll get into the 6 or 7 principles that I want to talk about in terms of effectively apologizing. My mom had 2 sisters. My mom was the middle child. And back in, I guess it was probably 1992, when my grandfather died, there were some things that were said and done that caused a rift between my mom and her sister, my aunt named Billy. And without getting into the detail, it doesn't matter who said what, why they said it, who was right, who was wrong, because none of that at the end of the day really matters, especially as we're talking about apologies. I would say one of the first rules to apologizing is set aside your ego, because I know we all want to be right. And the challenge with always wanting to be right is that none of us ever is. And when we let our ego control, it gets us into trouble and it prevents us from doing the things that we should be doing. Well, that is very much the case here with my mom and my aunt. So 1992, there was this issue, this conversation, this rift, and they stopped talking to one another. And days turned into weeks, weeks turned into months, and months turned into years, and years turned into decades. Well, fast forward to 2014, my mom had been diagnosed with pulmonary fibrosis. And if you're not familiar with pulmonary fibrosis, it is a disease that affects the lungs. What happens is that all of our lungs, your lungs, my lungs, have these little microscopic sacs that basically absorb the oxygen that we breathe in. And those sacs absorb the oxygen and then distribute that oxygen throughout our bloodstream. Well, my mom's lungs, due to this, what's called pulmonary fibrosis, would become scarred, and those little sacs could no longer absorb oxygen. And so over time, fewer and fewer parts of her lungs could absorb the oxygen. So there wasn't enough oxygen for the system. And what ends up happening for someone who has pulmonary fibrosis is that over the course of this very progressive and aggressive disease is that they really start to suffocate. The brain doesn't get enough oxygen, the heart doesn't get enough oxygen, the kidneys, the vital organs of the body don't get enough oxygen. Well, this was my mother's situation in 2014. She had been diagnosed about a year and a half before, and we were aware that the disease was terminal, but we didn't know how long. But I remember it was 2014, and I remember asking her, what would you like to do? I said, is there any place in the world that you'd like to go? Because I thought, knowing that her days were limited, at least as far as we know. I mean, all of our numbers are limited, but we knew to a greater certainty that hers were. And I asked her, what would you like to do? Where would you like to go? And she said, well, I'd like to go to New York. And so we arranged to take her to New York, which was great. And I had the pleasure of taking my mom and my dad to New York for the first time. They'd never been. And what a joy that was. It was a fantastic trip. And it created memories that I know that I will never forget. And I know that for both of them, it was amazing. My dad still to this day talks about it. So that was one thing that my mom wanted to do. But then as we continued the conversation, I asked her, I said, well, would you be interested in talking with Aunt Billy and seeing Aunt Billy? And what was so interesting at this point, I just want you to think about this. It was 1992 that they became estranged. This was 2014. So what is that? How many years later is that? 14 plus 8. What is that? 22 years? 22 years later, they were estranged for 22 years, had not seen one another, had not talked with one another, no text, nothing, no letters, nothing, not even communication between them on a roundabout way through other family members, no communication at all. Well, my mom said to me, she said, yes, I would like to, I'd like to see Aunt Billy. I'd like to talk with her. So I thought, well, that's great. So I called up my uncle and I asked him, I said, and I hadn't talked to him as well. I mean, that's one of the crazy things about some of these situations where two people will let an issue fester and grow to a point where it impacts other people around them. And it's crazy because my aunt and uncle have 4 kids, and my parents had 3. And the estrangement affected all of the kids, plus other family members, my grandparents. It affected my other aunts and uncles. It's crazy that this rift between these two people grew to affect more than just themselves. Well, I called up my uncle and I said, hey, this is John. And he said, oh, wow, I hadn't heard from you in years. I said, yeah, I know. It's crazy how time has flown. And we kind of reconnected for just a few minutes. I said, the reason I'm calling is that my mom has pulmonary fibrosis, and she would like to talk with Aunt Billy. She'd like to meet with her sister. I said, do you think she would? And he said, well, I don't know. You should talk to her. So he handed her the phone, and I simply asked her the same question. I said, my mom is dying from pulmonary fibrosis, and I'm just wondering if you would be interested in meeting with her. And she did not hesitate at all. She said, yes, of course, which I find so interesting, guys and gals. So I just want to pause here for a second, and I want to challenge you with this question. Think about relationships in your life where you believe you're right, you're in the right, and they were in the wrong. They did this to you. And you're holding this grudge and saying, well, I am not going to talk to them. I'm not going to be around them. They did this to me, right? And look how it's affected your life, how it's estranged you from this person. And it could be a family member. It could be a friend. It could be a former spouse. It doesn't matter who it is, but it's usually this, personal or intimate relationship. Because the degree of anger that we feel is really equal to the amount of love that we have for somebody, so that when they hurt us, we feel like they've hurt us, that the anger can be off the charts. We all know this. We do this. The people we get most angry with are the people we most love. So I just want you to think about that. What relationship in your life right now is coming to mind when I share this story with you about my mom and my aunt? How is this affecting you? This grudge that you hold, or this attitude that I'm right and they're wrong, and that they should apologize to me, and because they did this, I don't want to ever see them again. And how would things be different if you knew that your days were numbered? You see, what is both fortunate and unfortunate is that my mother and my aunt decided to meet, and it's fortunate because they got to reconnect. What is unfortunate is that there were 22 years that went by that they didn't have to be estranged from one another. But my aunt agreed. And so this is what I did. And I didn't tell my mom or my aunt, either one of them, what I was doing. I just said to my aunt, I said, great, well, what I'd like to do is, can I meet with you and Uncle Leonard for brunch Sunday morning? And I don't remember what day of the week it was, you know, when we talked, but I said, but just this next Sunday. And she said, yeah, that would be fine. And I said to my mom, I said, hey, let's go to brunch on Sunday. And I didn't tell her that my aunt and uncle were coming. In fact, I didn't tell her that there would be about 40 people at this brunch, because I invited all close family members and some friends who had been part of the family for over 50 years before I was born. And I made certain that my aunt got there first, and made certain that everybody else was in place. And then I brought my parents and my family. And we walked into the room, and my mom and aunt made eye contact. I'm having a hard time saying this because I'm starting to get emotional, and I'm not going to do that. They made eye contact. They looked at one another for the first time in 22 years, guys and gals. And it was a beautiful situation. It was a beautiful moment to watch, to see both of these women, and then this large group of people with over 40 people, just the sense of joy and happiness. And they both just started to cry, just bawl. And my mom didn't walk in. She rolled in her wheelchair. And I rolled her over to my aunt. My aunt stood up. My mom with assistance stood up, and they just embraced one another. They held one another for the first time in at least 22 years, because I don't know when it was the last time they'd hugged one another. You know, if it had been weeks before, months before, years before that point that they became estranged, but for the first time, at least in 22 years, they stood there and just hugged one another. Now, again, as I share that story with you, I want you to think about a relationship that at some point meant something to you. This person who probably still means something to you, but yet because of a mistake that they made, or that you made, or that you both made, there is this estrangement. There is this rift between the two of you. There's this uneasiness. And you may not be alienated, but how about just simply the fact that your relationship is not good? That it's not as warm as it could be. It's cold, or it's lukewarm. It's not that warm relationship that it used to be. Just want you to think about that and how that's affecting your life, not just with the relationship, but overall. I mean, our happiness isn't just limited to one relationship, or happiness in one area, bleeds into happiness and contentment in other areas, and dissatisfaction, anger, or fear in one area can bleed into other areas of our lives. So how is this impacting you? But it was fun to watch that as my mom and my aunt reconnected that morning, and everybody, both families reconnected, because it had been decades. And it was interesting how, as if we hadn't skipped a beat, that as if nothing had ever been wrong, that everything was always good. It was interesting how it could happen just like that. The fact that my mom was dying, it took that, unfortunately, for that to happen. And yet I am so grateful that it happened. What was interesting is that for the next 6 months, my mom and my aunt were inseparable. They spent every single day together, from the moment that they saw one another that Sunday morning till the day my mother died, 6 months later. I am so grateful that my mom and my aunt had the opportunity to reunite before my mother passed away. Not only for my mother and not only for my aunt, but also for everyone in that room and the people who were impacted. Just remember this, guys and gals. Whatever challenge that you're facing with someone in your life, especially loved ones, and if you're estranged, it doesn't just affect you, it affects the other people in your life, the people you love and adore and care for. So we've all been there. We've all been in situations where we've done something that causes people to be sad, angry, frustrated, want to end the relationship, on the extreme end, or just want distance from us. Whatever the issue is, right? However it plays out, there is this tension. And it comes down to the fact that we aren't meeting people's expectations. Again, I don't know what happened with respect to my mom and my aunt specifically. Generally I do, but the detail doesn't matter. But they were both angry with one another. They both made mistakes. we've all been there. We're going to make mistakes. We're not going to meet the expectations every time of the people in our lives. And as a result, we need to recognize that we're going to make mistakes. And if we're going to make mistakes, we better understand how it is that we can more effectively apologize to people so that we can shore up the relationship. We can eliminate that tension. We can eliminate the sadness, the anger, the frustration, so that the relationship can be whole and healthy, so that there isn't this sense of anger or sadness, or ultimately that it leads in estrangement. So there are 7 things that I want to share with you here. So let's go over those things, okay? There are many ways to apologize, and there are a lot of wrong ways to apologize. There are very few right ways to apologize. Now, as I go through these 7 things, this isn't the only way. There are other ways, and maybe there are other things that you could mention or say that we could include in this list. But this is, I think, a pretty good list of an approach to take when it's time to apologize to people. And remember, again, the very first thing is just simply setting the ego aside and being willing to say, you know what, it's not about being right or wrong. It's about rebuilding this relationship. It's about repairing this relationship. It's about reconnecting with this person that ultimately, if I were to set aside my anger and frustration, the need to be right, my ego, if I were to set all of those things aside, that this is a relationship that I want to be in. This is a person that I do love and adore, despite this challenge. So number 1, ask for permission. When it's time to apologize, ask for permission. And see, this, when I say ask for permission, I just want to dial in on that. See, this isn't about you, it's about them. That's why you want to ask for permission. See, the other person needs to be ready. If you want to apologize to somebody, but they're not ready to hear the apology, it's not time. And you pushing to give them an apology is you making it about you. See, their feelings have been hurt. They're angry. They're angry. They're frustrated. It's not about you. It's about them. So number 1, if you want to apologize, ask for permission to apologize, especially the greater the challenge or the issue, because there's going to be a lot more emotion, a lot more frustration, a lot more anger, a lot more sadness in the relationship, the energy between you two. So it's going to be important that you ask for permission and that they give you that permission. And oftentimes, guys and gals, I find that, you know, we want to address the issue right now. That's the way I'm. It's like, get it fixed right now. And oftentimes what I have found over the years is that if I give people space, not because I feel like I'm right, and I just want to give them space to think about what they did. No, I want to give them space to calm down so that when I do approach them about apologizing, they're more likely to accept my offer, my olive branch, to have the conversation about the issue, about me feeling sorry for or owning what it is that I did. So number 1, ask for permission to apologize. And oftentimes we're going to have to give it some time so that it allows them to calm down and actually be willing to engage in the conversation. Because there's no point in engaging in the conversation if we're going to have somebody who is angry and continues in the vein of that anger and the vitriol and the frustration and creates more anxiety. And then it ends up causing us to engage in the same bad behavior, and it makes the situation worse. Step number 2, let the other person know that you realize that your behavior hurt them. Look, guys and gals, the number 1 human need is acceptance or acknowledgement or validation. Simply acknowledging or validating them and letting them know that your behavior hurt them, if you let them know that, it's extremely important. It's extremely important for them to let down their guard, to be willing to listen to you. So be willing to let the other person know that you acknowledge and accept that your behavior hurt them. See, it's about saying to them that, look, you have a right to feel the way that you feel. You know, if I were you, I would feel the same way too. Let the other person know that your behavior hurt them, that you acknowledge that. If you want them to be likely to accept your apology, it's going to have to start with that. It's the mea culpa. It's, look, I did this. I know it hurts you. Then the third thing is this, is to tell them how you intend to correct the situation. See, if you're engaging in behavior that is repetitious, that you're doing it over and over and over again, the person is going to be less likely to accept your apology, especially if you apologize every single time. So you're going to have to share with them, okay, how is it that I intend to correct this situation? How do I make it right with you? How do I make it right with you? What do I intend to do to correct this situation? How am I going to change my behavior? And what is it that I have to do for you so that you feel better about this situation? See, this is going to require a conversation. It sets aside the ego that allows you to be vulnerable, so that it allows them to be willing to listen to what you have to say. So tell them how you intend to correct the situation. So it'll be very important for them to hear that, because they're going to be very reluctant, because there's a lot of frustration and anger. There's going to be, even in this conversation. And it's going to be important for them to know how you intend to correct the situation. How are you going to help them to feel better about this dynamic and the relationship? And then step number 4 is commit that you won't ever do the same thing again. See, people get upset, ladies and gentlemen, in relationships when there is a lack of safety. Or let me say this more specifically. People get upset when their expectations are not met. So if you're going to apologize to someone, you're going to have to commit that you're not going to do that thing ever again. You have to set their expectations, because here's what I know. They have an expectation that you're not going to do it again. Otherwise, why would they grant you forgiveness? Why would I forgive you when I believe or know that you're going to engage in the same behavior again? So it's critical. It is so critical that you commit to them that you won't ever engage in the same behavior again. See, it's going to be important for them to hear that and to believe that. You see, it's about setting people's expectations. Look, we all have a set of expectations in a relationship. And if we don't get our expectations met, our expectations are here, but the performance is down here, that gap creates anger, frustration, all the sorts of negative emotions you can imagine in a relationship, right? And the only way to overcome that is to begin to meet the expectations, for the other person to meet the expectations for us, or if we're falling short, to meet the expectations of the other person. And part of that is going to be this: committing to not engage in that behavior ever again, because they have this expectation that you shouldn't be doing this, that's not what should be happening in a relationship, at least the relationship that I want to be in, that normal, healthy relationship that I envision. So commit that you won't ever engage in that behavior. And step number 5 is, once you've talked it through, and man, you're going to have to talk it through. In fact, this is what's going to be important. You have got to let them express themselves. And this is going to be one of the most difficult parts of the entire process, because you're going to have to sit there and listen to this person express things with anger and frustration and disappointment and sadness about what you did that hurt them, and what you did and why it was wrong. See, you're going to have to sit there and listen to that. And it's going to be critical whether you're going to set aside your ego, as I said, and be willing to have that conversation. If you're going to say, but wait a minute, I'm right. I'm not 100% wrong here. You're part of the problem. You did this, right? Look, it takes 2 to tango. I get it. In all likelihood, they did something as well. But are you really going to hinge your apology on their willingness to apologize to you first, or to even acknowledge that they did something wrong? Guys and gals, if you're going to do that, you might as well just not even have the conversation, because oftentimes it's going to take you as the leader, the great communicator, to come to them and offer that olive branch for them to eventually recognize what it is that they did. And see that if you will show that vulnerability and own what it is that you have to own, and as that sinks in for them, maybe not even in this conversation, that over time, they will come back to you and say, you know what, I owe you an apology too. But you're going to have to lead the process. Because see, they're not part of this conversation. They don't recognize where they're falling short. They're not recognizing where they need to apologize, and they don't know how to effectively apologize. So they continue to engage in the same poor behavior of estrangement, alienation, or bad behavior that creates more tension within the relationship. So again, step number 5 is talk through it. And that as you've talked through it and you give them a chance to express themselves and you let them know that you listen to what they had to say, repeating and affirming what they have to say and saying to them, you know what, if I were you, I would feel the same way too. You have a right to feel that way. And I apologize. I feel so horrible. I feel so bad. That as part of that conversation, you ask them for forgiveness. That's where you need to ask for the forgiveness. This is where they're going to have to step up. And they're going to have to be the bigger person. They're going to have to set their ego aside. And despite the anger and the frustration, the sadness that was caused by whatever mistake was made, that now they're going to set that aside and they're going to forgive you. See, the important thing about this is that in the process of asking them, guys and gals, for forgiveness, to ask them in a way that is humble. One of the best words that you can use that creates a sense of humbleness or humility is favor. Just simply asking them, Bob, can I ask a favor of you? Yeah, what's that? I really sincerely, I want to apologize to you. Could I ask you for your forgiveness? Could you do me a favor? Could I ask for your forgiveness? Just simply asking a favor sets the right tone, because what it does is it shifts the power or the control to them. It's really important. They need to feel empowered at this point, because I can tell you they didn't feel empowered. If they felt empowered, they wouldn't have gotten angry. They wouldn't have behaved the way that they behaved. They were feeling unsafe in the relationship, and therefore they were angry, and they acted out after whatever it is that you did because they felt a lack of control or power in the relationship. Their expectations weren't being met. So as a result, there was a sense of safety or security or control or power in the relationship. Really critical point, guys and gals, as we talk about this. That's step number 5, that once you talk it through, be willing to ask for forgiveness. Ask by asking for a favor. Let me ask you a favor if I could. Could I ask for your forgiveness? A critical point in the process. Once you've talked through the conversation, they've expressed themselves, you've expressed yourself, then step number 6 is to let 24 probably to maybe 72 hours, maybe less. It depends upon the situation, how bad of a situation it was, how long it's been since you've talked. But 24 to 72 hours, let that time pass, and then write them a note. Don't do a text, don't do an email, do a handwritten note. And this is going to be especially important for the longer period of time that maybe you have not talked, if there was actual estrangement for months or years. This is extremely important. This is an important step of the process, is to write a note, a handwritten note that really memorializes what it is that you said, what you talked about, and that you commit to never doing that thing again, and that you're so grateful for the relationship, for their willingness to sit down and have the conversation, and that you're so excited about moving forward with them and maintaining this great, robust, vibrant, healthy relationship with them. I know that those key steps that I've just outlined there seem like they're pretty easy, but we all know this, guys and gals, it's the ego that gets in the way, and it makes that entire process very difficult. The first step is the most difficult step, just simply setting aside the ego and being willing to engage in this process. I get it. I want to go back to those questions that I asked. Think about the relationships that you're in currently, or that in the past have been destroyed because of a mistake that you made or the other person did. And what do you have to apologize for? Forget about what they have to apologize for. What do you have to apologize for? Stop taking an assessment or accounting of what other people have done that's wrong. How about you just simply own what you have and clean up your own front door, your own front yard? Start with that. What do you have to apologize for? Who should you apologize to? How is the lack of the apology and the energy that's existed there affecting negatively the relationship? How would it be different if you did apologize and they accepted it? What would your life look like if you eliminated all of that negative energy? Think about it. If you're estranged from a family member, a brother, a sister, an aunt, an uncle, a parent, how would your life be different if that estrangement no longer existed. And again, I can just feel it. I can hear it when I say that. For a lot of people, it's, yeah, but you don't know what happened. You don't understand why I don't get along with them. You don't understand the way they behave, the things that they have done. I don't. I can't. I can't even imagine. I don't. All I know is my own experiences. And I watched two ladies who did not talk for 22 years, who 22 years after their estrangement reconnected as if nothing had ever happened, because they simply set aside their egos and were willing to forgive, because there was this impetus, there was this catalyst that caused that to happen. It was the specter of my mom losing her life, that she wasn't going to be around for very long. And it made things very real very quickly. They realized that this grudge, this issue, was not that important. So my question for you is, what thing that they did or that you did is being assigned an amount of importance that it does not deserve, that is just not that significant, that we made the issue much bigger than it is, and the punishment, so to speak, is greater than the crime? That it just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense that I would be estranged from my brother or my sister or my aunt or uncle or my parents, you know, my mom or my dad or my grandma or grandpa or my friend who used to be my best friend, for months or decades or for the rest of my life, because of that one thing. That really, that on my deathbed, I would say to myself, I am glad I held a grudge. I'm so glad that we didn't spend any time together. Really? See, I know that that's not the case. It's the reason I'm asking you that question, to get real, to think about that. End of days, that's the way you would feel. And of course, the answer is no, you wouldn't. You wouldn't. So I challenge you to think about the relationships that you are in or have been in, where there's been a challenge, where you've made a mistake and they are upset. Forget about what they've done. Own what you have done. And then consider approaching them and going through the steps of apologizing and doing it the effective way. But guys and gals, all I can say is this, that it's never too late to apologize. It never is. In order for you to be willing to go out, though, and be effective at this, you're going to have to do something that is difficult for most people to do. It is simply to forgive the other person. You're going to have to be the person who starts the process. You're going to have to be the person who takes a step back and says, you know what? I'm going to forgive them. Even though they haven't come to me and apologized, and damn it, they should, by rights they should, whatever, I get it. Just simply forgive them. Be that person. Be the person who says, you know what, I'm going to forgive them. One of the phrases that I use in my mind all the time is kind of an affirmation to myself, is that I need to be more curious and less judgmental. I need to be more curious and less judgmental. And the second phrase is this, that everybody is doing the best that they know how. See, if I recognize that everybody's doing the best that they know how, it allows me to show them grace that I otherwise would not. When somebody does something that hurts me or offends me, one of the first things that I have to remind myself is, you know what? They're doing the best that they know how. If they knew how to do it better, they would have already done that. They would be doing that thing, because they're not looking to make their life more difficult. They're not looking to go out there and to hurt other people. They're just not. People aren't. People are not going out there intentionally looking to hurt other people, but yet they do. They hurt other people. So just remember that. It's our responsibility to forgive. Be willing to forgive them, willing to forgive ourselves, because that becomes the foundation for us to go out and have a healthy conversation with another person to rebuild the relationship, starting with simply asking for permission to apologize. Guys and gals, I hope this has been helpful for you. I hope that you've enjoyed the stories. I hope that you wrote down those questions that I asked. If you didn't, go back and listen to the message. Write down those questions and ask those questions and figure it out, because I guarantee you there isn't one person who is listening this morning who doesn't have a person that they could apologize to, if not many people. And imagine what your life would look like if you repaired those relationships, how different it would be. Not only because those people are now in your life and you get to enjoy them and get to have that dynamic again, but just simply think about all that negative energy, that baggage that you're holding on to because of that relationship being in disrepair. That if you were to simply to get rid of that out of your life, how different your life would be. Just how amazing would that be? Think about that, how it would feel. Guys and gals, I can tell you how it felt when my mom and my aunt got back together, how cathartic that was, how powerful that felt, not only for them, but for the entire family. I will never forget those moments when they reunited and those days after and the days since then, because it's connected me with family that I love and always will love, because that's the way it should be. All right, guys and gals, let's finish it up with some